Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this presentation on Beat the Silos, Maximize Resilience in Your Supply Chain with Unified Solutions, presented by Manhattan Associates. One reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, we are in the midst of a seismic shift as consumers ramp up their expectations of global supply and demand models. So today, we're going to hear about a vision of building unified supply chains and how a modern-day transportation management solution drives efficiency and helps customers become more sustainable. We'll see how transportation, warehouse, and yard management all come together on a single cloud-native platform, making possible the digital unification of distribution and logistics and the fulfillment of customer expectations in the physical world. With that, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Rob Schaefer is Vice President of TMS Sales with Manhattan Associates. Rob has spent his entire 38-year career as a sales professional. The last 25 have been spent in enterprise software sales, with the last 13 years dedicated to logistics. At Manhattan Associates, he focuses on sales and business development in North and South America. Bryant Smith is Director of Product Management at Manhattan Associates. Over the last 12 plus years, Bryant has served in various roles in the supply chain software space, including operations, implementation, and product management. In his current role, he builds solutions that solve real business problems and deliver consistent value to customers and end users. So with that, I want to turn it over to Bryant Smith for the presentation. Bryant, take it away.
Bob, thank you so much. This is such a topic near and dear to our hearts, especially with the world that's going on within supply chain. And thank you for the preamble here. Of course, if you're not familiar, Manhattan Associates, we provide supply chain software as well as commerce software to our customers to help them support their business operations. So we have a unique topic here today around the unified supply chain. And to frame up the conversation, I'd actually like to start with the current state that we see with some of our peers, our partners, our customers in the industry today. And what we see really is that there are siloed and disparate systems, point-centric systems that help solve particular problems, but they're separate applications. So whether you have a WMS, a yard management system, or a TMS, it's typically in a state where those applications are not talking to one another and certainly not directly. And that creates a lot of problems when you're trying to manage an end-to-end workflow within the supply chain space. So whether you're using a different WMS or a different TMS, you're probably using a situation where you have different vendors. So you may have one vendor that supports a WMS system. You may have one vendor that supports a TMS system, another vendor that supports a yard management system. And the problem here is that, of course, the information is not flowing in a systematic way that helps you get real-time information of how you're executing. And if you are lucky enough to have a vendor that supports multiple applications within this space, the likelihood that they are on a single platform is just not possible. We haven't seen it today, and we're happy to have that conversation about the topics and the use cases of a unified approach. But let's talk a little bit more about the problems that exist when a TMS and a WMS do not coexist together on the same platform. And I always first like to give an example. We have orders in your host system that you need to deliver out to your customers from your warehouse. Now, that order has moved from the ERP to the TMS so that you can secure carrier capacity, equipment, and rates so that you can build a transportation plan to deliver that order. Well, of course, when you're building that transportation plan, you're making assumptions on the quantity that's part of that transportation plan. So you're assuming that you're going to deliver that order in full. And you're assuming that the weight, piece, pallet, volume is accurate. And at best, it's close to accurate. But what happens when there are shortages? What happens when there are damages where they're unforeseen? So you're potentially overbuilding or underbuilding a trailer in a transportation route. Now, moving on in the workflow, that order is also sent to the WMS. We need to start allocating inventory and making sure that our pick path is aligned with when are we going to be picking up this shipment so that it can be staged and be put into the appropriate dock door or the appropriate trailer. But all of this information is being exchanged through the host system. So of course, this leads to latency. It leads to inaccurate information. It leads to inflexibility, and it leads to suboptimal processes because this information is constantly moving through the host system to the disparate applications. So of course, this leads to inefficient processes. And we've seen that time and time again, especially if the integrations start to break. So if your integration between TMS and host system breaks, you need to go through a troubleshooting process to understand where did the failure occur? Did the failure occur in the host system? Did the failure occur within the application? But also, these different applications need to go through upgrades. So am I staying in sync? Am I backward compatible with these different applications as they're going through upgrades? And time again, we have seen that inefficiencies result in these different architectures. So we set out on our mission to help unify these applications onto a single platform. So our customers continue to use their host system, their ERP system, their order management systems upstream so that they can continue on with business continuity. But what we've done within our supply chain execution is put WMS, TMS, and most recently yard management all on the same platform. And of course, the benefits with this approach are the opposite of what we had just talked about are the pain points in the current approach. When you're on a single platform that hosts warehouse, transportation, and yard, you don't have to worry about the integration between the different systems. So whether you're going through an upgrade, whether you're going through exchanging information, all of those integrations and those silos are broken down because we've built this platform on microservice architecture that allows us to singularly build these components that support these different workflows. And I'll get into the components in just a second, but the data that's moving through the TMS, the warehouse, and the yard is the exact same information. It's not information that needs to be exchanged with a host system and then send back down to the point solution where we've seen in the previous model. The information exists within the platform. So it doesn't matter if you're a warehouse user trying to understand when is my shipment going to arrive, because you already know. The same shipment that exists for the transportation users is the same exact shipment that exists for the yard and warehouse users. So as we get ETAs of when a shipment is going to arrive or depart, our warehouse users and our yard users are being informed of that exact same information. So the latency is decreased. The inflexibility is decreased. The visibility is increased. So now we can be more efficient in how we operate in real-time information because we're using the same information that's exchanged between every component on the platform. And no matter which workflow you're engaged in, whether you're in a warehouse workflow or a transportation workflow or a yard workflow, you're using the same information to plan, execute, but also the same visibility across each of the different components. And of course, the benefits that come with that are increased efficiency. Now, when I had talked about the architecture of how we composed this platform, it's based on componentry. These components are shared components across the entire workflow. So these components are speaking to one another so that we're exchanging information appropriately, but it also allows those components to be updated in real time so that if you have an appointment, let's say, for example, that same appointment is the same appointment that's in the transportation user's visibility. It's the same appointment that the yard user will see, and it's the same appointment that the warehouse user will see. But this component architecture allows us to do different things on top of visibility alone. These components, of course, will allow us to be extendable. So although we are updating this information and providing new capabilities every 90 days, customers have the ability to extend these components to be customized to their specific individual customer needs. So although we provide base capabilities that we believe are beneficial, there may be a process that's specific to an individual customer that the whole might not benefit from. And that's okay. You can still be part of the component architecture and getting these capabilities every 90 days, but you can take some of these components and make it your own. So if there was a specific business process around appointment scheduling, or whether that was around track and trace, or whether it was around planning or execution, you can take the core capabilities of the component, but you can also customize it to make it yourself. Now, this doesn't impact the rest of the customers on the platform because you extended that component to be specific to your business. So we've typically seen the customization and the benefits of customization really in the on-premise world, where you didn't have to impact other customers because you were the only one using the application. But also in a cloud or SaaS-based world, you couldn't really have that level of customization because you were on the same code base as the rest of your peers using that application. So how can we take the best of both worlds? And that's what we've done. On a cloud-based platform, you still get to be on a versionless product and get new capabilities every 90 days, but also you can customize it. So it doesn't matter whether you were on premise before or whether you were on a SaaS-based model before. Being on part of this cloud platform allows you to do different things. Speaking of new capabilities, as part of our release cycle, there is zero downtime. And you typically see that in a cloud-based model, in a SaaS-based model, where they take the system down, they go through maintenance and upgrades, and for a certain period of time, you're not able to use the application. Well, not in this architecture. On the cloud-based architecture, we get to take down one component at a time and have redundancy against that component so that you can continue on with your workflow. So if you're using appointment scheduling, or you're using some type of optimization, or you're using some type of planning, you can continue to use those components because we're taking components offline individually, which doesn't impact the end-to-end workflow. And we're replacing that component with a redundant component so that you can continue on with each step. So now you're truly part of getting new capabilities with zero downtime. And of course, what this leads to is efficiencies. We already talked about visibility. We already talked about planning. We already talked about execution. But now you don't have to have scheduled downtime to get the benefits out of this solution. One of the things that we want to highlight as part of this architecture, and which we announced earlier this year at our user conference, is the unified yard. So we had the Manhattan Active transportation workflows on the Active platform. We had the warehouse workflows on the Active platform, but there was still the workflows in the middle between transportation and warehouse that we saw a natural capability to extend. and that was the yard workflows. So whether you have a yard that's attached to your warehouse, or you have a yard that's across the street, or you have a shared yard, all of that information can still be leveraged within the shared platform. So again, if I'm a transportation user and I schedule an appointment to have my driver arrive at a certain time, I can have my warehouse user, my yard user, and my transportation user see the exact same information. As that driver arrives and checks in at the gate, my transportation users are now informed that the driver has arrived, but also my warehouse users are also informed that the driver has arrived. And at that point, we can start determining what is the best dock door for this driver to be associated with, or this trailer to be associated with. And the benefit here, of course, is we can look into the warehouse to say, what is the best door associated with this trailer based on the inventory that's in that trailer? So if I'm thinking about put away logic, I'm thinking about the distance to travel to put that product away on the shelves. I can say it's probably better based on the contents of this trailer to put them in dock door 10 because those contents are being put away near dock door 10, and vice versa. Maybe it was dock door 99, but I have that ability and I have that capability to look into the warehouse as a yard user to say, what is the best possible door for me to put this trailer on so that I'm more efficient in my operations? The same thing can be said about detention and demurrage. So if we have a driver who checks in at the gate and we allow a certain amount of time for them to be loaded or unloaded, I can now start informing my transportation users and my warehouse users that this driver has been in the yard waiting to be loaded or unloaded for a certain period of time. And if we want to avoid some detention charges or demurrage charges, we need to either load this driver or unload this driver quickly so that we can mitigate that cost. Same thing can be said for a drop trailer. If I have a drop trailer and this trailer or this asset needs to be turned, I've consumed the allowable amount of days or weeks for this drop trailer. How can I determine that these are the trailers that need to be loaded versus the other trailers in the yard? It's this exact same information that's shared across transportation, yard, and warehouse. So of course, we get the benefit of not only the visibility that's associated with when drivers arrive and depart, but also we get the added visibility of how long have they been there to influence my planning and execution. So what we'd like to do is inform the users that these types of actions need to occur. The same thing can be said when the driver departs the yard. We need to know when have they left the dock door, which is typically a warehouse type status. When have they left the gate, which is typically a yard status, and feed that information to our transportation users so that they know that the driver is on the road, in transit, and heading to their next stop. Of course, this information allows for better calculation of ETAs. Knowing the exact second that the driver has left the gate, I can now start calculating in real time what is the ETA to my next stop. And if I'm within a certain threshold, say I have the potential to being late, I can now start informing my customers and my partners that there's a potential for a delay. And I can do that proactively. I don't have to wait till the driver has actually arrived late. I can be notifying my customers that these are going to occur. So what does that mean for me? Well, perhaps I can schedule a later delivery appointment. So if I need to deliver things on time and in full, and I know I'm going to be late, how can I work with my customer to get a later appointment time so that when I do deliver, I deliver on time? And it's this information that works together harmoniously on a single platform that allows you to exchange information both with the transportation user, with the yard user, and with the warehouse user. So I'd like to at least turn it back over to Bob So, Bob, we can have a panel discussion to talk a little bit more about these capabilities and the benefits that they provide.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Brian, for that presentation. Let's bring Rob Schaefer in now to join us in the panel. Hi, Rob.
Bob, how are you?
Good. Thanks for being with us. So this is a really interesting concept, the idea that these pieces of these puzzle used to exist and it didn't even make a puzzle because they didn't fit, right? Now we're talking about, really, I don't want to mix metaphors about the silo and the puzzle, but this is really an exciting idea that this is all unified now. I'd like to ask you guys, though, just to start, how would you rate the maturity level of the way in which supply chain leaders and professionals today are utilizing technology to manage their organizations?
So I would start off by saying it just depends upon where you are in that supply chain continuum in terms of maturity, right? So we've got plenty of people, believe it or not, are still using telephones, email, and Excel to manage transportation. You've got plenty of folks that have a transportation management system and a warehouse management system and a yard management system, and they may have good solutions for that, but they only manage that particular function, right? So they're not getting a view into that whole end-to-end process across all of those things, right? So, or we have people out there that are just outsourcing that entire function to somebody else, right? So in all three of those approaches, you're losing efficiency because you're not managing the entire process. And chances are you're increasing your costs because you're either paying someone else to do it or you don't have that visibility across your entire solution, right? So today, that's kind of what we see, right? All the way down to phone calls to just disparate systems that complete outsourcing. What I see as though where people want to go is very much what Bryant just explained, right? So, if the past couple of years have taught us anything, it's that as much automation and visibility into the entire supply chain really matters. So people are looking for a connected supply chain, right? I always say logistics is a team sport. We can't just rely on the information that's within our own system, but the information that is from third parties, right? Whether they be visibility partners or digital freight brokers or benchmark systems, whatever it is, you want to be able to pull in as much information into a system and make it actionable. So I see far more, logistics and supply chain executives wanting that better view and the ability to make it actionable, as well as to be able to take advantage of new technologies like AI, machine learning, what have you, to again become more predictive in terms of what might happen and be prepared for that versus being completely reactive, as we saw in the last couple of years, and really kind of being in trouble when it comes to logistics.
Certainly, those are the aspirations. The question is, to what degree are companies meeting that? How mature are they, and how able are they to embrace that? Brian, do you have a view on that?
I do, and Rob had said it's a team sport, and I view it the same way. It's really an ecosystem of your supply chain, right? Is you have customers, you have vendors, you have partners, you have carriers, all of these people need to work together to help execute, plan, so on and so forth, right? So these applications, the platform, it enables better collaboration across the different parties and in such a way that we're seeing technology advance at such a rapid pace, right? And part of that is really due to a microservice or API first type architecture, what allows you to connect with your supply chain partners more effectively, right? EDI certainly is a capability, but it's not the capability of the future, right? But these APIs allow you to exchange information at a rapid pace, but it also allows you to leverage new capabilities that are starting to become more and more prevalent. Of course, the hot topic these days is generative AI and things of that nature. And that type of technology is just not conducive to the old ways of working. Like Rob had mentioned, phone calls, emails, so on and so forth. But even with EDI, exchanging that information file by file, you can't leverage the new technologies based on those old ways of working. You need to get into a modern architecture. You need to get into a modern platform so that you can start leveraging these new capabilities that just weren't possible before.
So I'm starting to get a sense now the technology that has arisen in the last few years to make possible something that just wasn't possible before, and that is unification of these systems. How important is the cloud? I mean, a lot of these software vendors, Manhattan included, all depend very heavily on the cloud today. Was that an essential step forward? And does it serve as the basis for making all of this possible, Rob?
It very much does, and it does as long as you have the right architecture. I know we keep harping on that, right? I mean, we have a world-class TMS system, best-in-class functionality, right? But that question you just asked is incredibly important, right? First, I think I need to define what cloud means, right? Everyone says they have a cloud solution. A lot of cloud solutions are simply an on-premise solution that has been moved into somebody else's data center, right? Still have the same issues in terms of potentially companies releasing, annual releases that nobody takes them up on because it requires a project and a budget and all of those sorts of things. It's disruptive, a massive amount of testing, right? Whereas when you completely re-architect a system, and as far as I know, we're the only one that has, and completely make your application cloud native, right? Which means we're doing updates on a 90-day basis with zero downtime. We require minimal testing because of the microservice architecture, to where we're only adding functionality to specific microservices and not deprecating any functionality anywhere else. So we are not a bundle of code that is invasive to everything, that as soon as you make a change breaks something. So we are a true cloud solution, which then what Bryant was just saying enables us to be efficient and to react to change, right? Everybody wants the agility of, hey, a new problem arises tomorrow. Maybe the functionality for that to solve that problem doesn't exist. A company like us creates it and we deliver it in 90 days, right? Versus a software company might say, hey, I have a solution for that, but hey, Mr. Customer, you're going to have to go through a traditional upgrade process. It may take 8 months to do. You're going to have to test every system in your company. And that's just not the way of the world anymore, right? You need to be agile and to be able to react very quickly. And you can only do that in the cloud and with a cloud native application and a microservices architecture.
And one of the big advantages of the cloud, of course, is that it simplifies the whole idea of updates, because otherwise you have these separate applications. Well, I just had to update my WMS, and oh my God, next week it's the YMS, and then oh my God, the TMS. So, Brian, is that also the case, that you feel that there's a smooth path to updating, and is that almost invisible to the user of the system as those systems improve?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just really, really quickly kind of dive down into what the upgrade process looks like. So I had mentioned the components that support these workflows, right? And we're able to bring one component down while the remaining components stay up and active. And the component that we took down is replaced by a replica, so that when you're thinking about a brick pathway, you don't want to be walking on that brick pathway and be missing bricks because you're going to twist your ankle and trip, right? So we're replacing those bricks with replica bricks so they can continue on walking down the workflow. Once we've updated that component to what it needs, we put it back in to the sidewalk. So there's really no downtime because we have replicas and we're able to isolate those components as they're being updated. So it really does add for a seamless experience. And the application world, right? There's a lot of applications out there that are extremely capable. They've been around for 20 years. So feature function wise, they can do a lot of things. But my question would be, with your 20-year-old WMS, is it scalable? Is it scalable for the next 20 years? Can you leverage the new technologies that are coming at us at such a rapid pace? So although it may be functional in today's world, you can do your functions. My question would be, is it scalable?
Yeah. I'm trying to understand a little bit more about what we mean when we say a unified solution. I mean, for instance, with regard to the data, is it in fact a single data repository that everything flows into from WMS, from TMS, from YMS, or does each of those elements have their own data that then flow across, that it moves across and communicates? I mean, which is it, Rob?
Well, I'm going to let Brian do this after my answer. Well, you go first, Brian, since we're getting a little bit more technical.
So, that's the beauty of it. When we had talked about, let's say, an order being sent to TMS, an order being sent to WMS, it's,
Hmm.
you're planning against an assumption and then you're filling inventory, within the warehouse. The beauty of the unified platform is the entities and the data is the exact same, right? So if we get an order coming into the platform, that is the same exact order that we're planning against from a transportation perspective. That's the exact same order that we're allocating inventory against. So that actually makes for a more efficient transportation plan because I have actual inventory being associated to my order and I can plan better because I know exactly how many pallets, I know exactly how many pieces, I know the weight, the volume. So when I'm actually consolidating these orders together, I'm not consolidating based on an assumption. I'm consolidating on what's actually available to me. So I don't overbuild the trailer. I don't underbuild the trailer because I have that information for me. You can extend that to almost any data element within the platform. The same shipment. I had talked about an ETA. So an ETA for that shipment is shared with all of those different workflows. My yard user knows when the driver is going to hit my gate. The warehouse user knows when they're going to hit the dock. It's the shared data that allows for that efficiency.
Yeah, and I would just take it a step further, just because I know we keep talking platform, right? And I just want to make sure that everyone truly understands WMS and TMS and YMS are a single application, right? So if you were to subscribe to any of those, the other two come along with it, right? Now, you don't have to subscribe to the other two, but it's lurking out there in the background and you're not permitted to use it. But literally, they are a single application, which goes to your question, Bob, in terms of, yeah, they're all looking at the exact same data at the exact same time. There's no syncing of data whatsoever. It's instantaneous.
I'm wondering what the customer profile is when they come to you to adopt a system like this. I mean, yeah, maybe they've got these three disparate systems that don't play nice together, but maybe they don't even have all three systems. I'm thinking specifically of I've been continually shocked over the years to hear how many companies don't even have a formal TMS. And it seems like YMS is not quite as mature. I wonder, do they come to you with all of these systems in place, or in some cases, they not even have one of the three, one or more of the three?
I would say it's across the board, right? So, this unified message is extremely important to us. So generally, me being dedicated to TMS, I'm generally talking to folks that either do not have a TMS, have an older TMS, or their business has grown, they're growing out of the TMS, right? But the conversation is always the unified conversation, right? Because at some point in time, they may need a WMS, or they did understand that we have a single application and they know they have issues in WMS, and that normally they wouldn't bring those up to me being the TMS guy, right? So we always talk about that particular message, but yeah, it could be anywhere across that continuum of they have one of the solutions, all three of them, they've just made an acquisition, you name it, we see it.
I've been hearing a lot about the woes of truckers today, how difficult their lives are. And one of the things that make it difficult is dwell time at these facilities, how long they have to wait in order to load and unload, upwards of 4 hours on a regular basis. Can you speak to how this unified system helps make truckers' lives easier?
Brian, I'll let you handle that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty slick. We heard that same problem. And, whether you're a common carrier or whether you're part of a driver, part of a fleet, right? It doesn't matter, right? Nobody wants to waste their precious time sitting in a yard or sitting at a dock. This is just not efficient. So how can we help everyone be more efficient? Well, one of the things we can do is at the time that you check in at the gate at the yard, everyone's fumbling through, well, what type of reference number do I need? Do I need the customer's reference number? Do I need a purchase order? Do I need an ASN? What type of information do I need? Well, that goes away. What we have is a simple check-in barcode where you can pull up to the gate and say, hey, I'm here to pick up this. Gatekeeper comes in, scans the barcode. Great. I know you're here for this shipment or this order, or whatever the case might be. Either it's a drop shipment, go over and place your trailer in this yard slot, or you're here for a live load or unload, go to this dock door so that we can load and unload you more efficiently. So you're cutting down not only on paperwork, but you're also cutting down on inefficiencies, right? Because, maybe I had given them the wrong reference number or whatever the case might be. So now we're more efficient in the intake, but also we're more efficient in the execution or within the actual warehouse and yard, because now I have a timestamp of when they arrived, and guess what? The clock starts. I need to actually get this guy loaded or unloaded so that they can be on their way, because I don't want the detention charges. I don't want those extra costs. Well, those are being displayed in the warehouse monitors so that we say, this guy pulled into dock door 3. You have 2 hours to get this guy loaded. Otherwise, you're going to start incurring detention. Well, guess what? Turns into more of a gamification process now. You can be more efficient because it's actually a game, right? It's, hey, I got to quickly get this guy loaded or unloaded and by this time frame so that we can do this. So again, it's the sharing of the data on the platform that helps drive efficiency, but also visibility.
Seems especially in these times, or when there are times of constrained carrier capacity, being friendly to your carriers and being a facility that attracts carriers is just absolutely essential. Mm-hmm. All right, you got a lot of customers that are now going live with product. So outcome and user case data will be coming soon. We're going to really anxious to see that. But in the meantime, give me a kind of an idea of how you guys consider yourselves as delivering value from this system. Rob, you want to start with that?
Sure. I'll take a little bit of a different tact on that question or approach, and then Bryant can weigh in terms of how we deliver value as a company. This is where I'm going to go with this, right? Okay. So we're a supply chain first company, right? We're a public company since 1990. We are very much in charge of our own destiny, right? We're not invested in by private equity. We're not owned by larger companies. We're not being divested. We're not acquiring people, right? We truly are focused on supply chain software. We put a tremendous amount of R&D money into our products, and that is with the input of our customers. But what kind of truly makes us different is that we saw the promise of the cloud years ago and re-architected all of our applications on this microservices platform. I believe that we're probably the only folks that have gone to the extent that we have in the marketplace. So we're constantly investing in the solution. We're unique in that we implement our own solutions, right? So when you subscribe to our software at that same point in time, you're going to get a statement of work from our professional services organization. You're going to understand how long is the project going to take, what's the cost, who's required on your side, who's required on our side, those sorts of things. And we take a very personal approach, and I think this is very important. We take a very personal approach to customer support. Oftentimes, software companies merely just offer up a URL in which their clients can go to and log a service request, and then generally they are served up a knowledge base for the customer to try and diagnose the problem themselves. Now, while we do have a URL, we actually have a phone number, and you can find it. And we actually assign a customer support person to your account who knows who you are, what your workflows are, and will answer the phone. And if they can't answer the question or solve the issue on the phone, it will get escalated within our own organization. But it's an extremely important point because we take a very personal approach to support, and I just don't see that in most places. So. So when people ask me the value question, that's my answer. And if Brian wants to take it more on the product side, he can do that. But
yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Brian. I just want to say my hearing isn't working very well. I thought I heard you say you actually have a customer service phone number. Excuse me. Okay, Brian.
It's funny you say that, because have you ever, whether it be software or not, try to get hold of a customer support person at a company and you Google them and try and find the actual phone number, and you cannot. It's hidden.
We've all been there. Brian, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, and Rob, I appreciate you going back to the human aspect of it, right? A lot of what we've been talking about today has been the product. So I appreciate the insight there. But bring us back to the product, because I'm the product guy. It's everything we do is to help reduce costs and improve service for our customers, right? That's the name of the game, right? Lower cost, improve service. So how can we help them do that? Well, one of the things we do is implementation, for example. So we have our own people doing the implementations, making sure there's best practices, that they're leveraging the capabilities. We don't farm it out to a third party. But also what comes with that product-wise, we had mentioned that this is all one platform, right? So WMS, TMS, YMS, they're all on the same platform. So when you go to implement, you're implementing it. Now, the licensing is what turns it on, turns it off from a permission perspective. But if you're going to be going through the process of a WMS implementation, of a TMS implementation, of a YMS implementation, that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. Now, part of that architecture is you've already set up your main components when you implement the WMS. So if it's time to implement TMS, guess what? The time's reduced in half because you're not redoing the main architecture because you've already set up the components as part of the WM deployment. Okay, well, now it's time to deploy YMS. Well, guess what? Even less time because you've already set up your locations, your facilities, your dock doors, and all this other stuff. So it makes the speed to value so much faster because a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done. Now, that's not true with other applications where you have to go in and implement the exact same thing. This facility is this facility in this warehouse, and this facility in this yard, and this facility in this transportation management system. You have to do it 3 different times. Not the case here, right? So I would just add another layer of benefit here, of course, and then reporting, right? Is if we're using the same data, same order, same shipment, same appointment, it makes reporting so much easier, right? Because you're not trying to pull data out of a warehouse system. You're not trying to pull data out of a TMS system and run a whole bunch of Excel macros to marry them up together. And a shipment in your warehouse is actually a load in your TMS. So they're not even speaking the same language. So, I'd say not only in terms of real-time execution, but also post-execution, the reporting gets so much easier on a unified platform, right? Because it's the same data. And now I can merge my performance across all of my workflows. How am I performing in the warehouse relative to how did I perform in transportation and so on and so forth. So I'd say that's another benefit we want to highlight.
Great. I'd like to bring the audience in the few minutes we have remaining. We do have some audience questions. So even as we are answering them now, the audience is encouraged to continue to submit your questions by clicking on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to as many of your questions as we possibly can in the time allotted. So here's one. You alluded very briefly to AI, artificial intelligence. This questioner is saying, how are you integrating AI into your systems or solutions?
Yeah, such a great question. And, obviously this has been a really hot topic, really ever since, some of the chat GPTs of the world have been introduced and everyone's really seeing the value. Actually, we are well on our way to be introducing these new capabilities into the product. And I would say we actually have a head start on some of the other folks in the industry because we're microservice and API based. That lends us to integrate these capabilities into the product much faster, but also the large language models, the generative AI, they run on a lot of data, right? So having more data and better accessible data to feed into these algorithms and these engines lead to better recommender systems, lead to better types of recommendations, lead to better types of performance. So if you're on, let's say, an on-premise model, or you're on a SaaS model, that's pretty hard to do with these new technologies. So I would say we kind of have a head start there. We're going to be introducing some new capabilities. Our release cycles every 90 days. We're going to be introducing some new capabilities in the AI world here in the near future, and we're looking forward to announcing those.
This is sort of an AI-related question. Maybe it's required in order to make this possible, but it's asking, how can the data that's generated out of the TMS, the WMS, the YMS be analyzed and used for future planning purposes?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the age-old question of, how did I perform in let's say that time period versus how do I need to perform going forward? So of course you can analyze historical data, getting respect to, what type of conditions were you operating in? Were you operating in a soft market? Were you operating in a tight market? That obviously influences your performance, but having that additional information to say, this is what we're going to be predicting your execution to be in the coming months. There's factors that play into seasonal demand and promotions and those types of things that you need to account for when you're executing. Do I need to adjust my inventory levels? Do I need to secure more capacity? It's having that insight to help you better plan for the future. And there's certainly capabilities that we can offer to help you to plan and prepare for the future.
By the way, this questioner wants to know in what format is the data being transferred within the components of this unified solution?
So I can't really give you the secret sauce, but let's say we engaged in maybe more of a project level. Happy to share that information.
Okay. Questioner says we do a lot of business in Europe and Asia. Does Manhattan support international functionality?
Yeah, actually, we have a large contingent of customers across the world. Oh, sorry, Rob, was there something?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a large contingent of customers across the globe, North America, South America, Europe, APAC. But, what's cool about that is, each region has their own unique requirements, right? Executing freight in North America is different than executing freight in Europe. And having that ability to not only put the capabilities in the product every 90 days, but as we mentioned, you can extend it to be more specific to your business operations. So not only do you have flexibility in terms of the architecture and the capabilities, but you also have the ability to work with a contingent of stakeholders in that region. So, as more requirements and more capabilities come up, that contingent is also influencing the product to say, we need this type of capability within this region. And guess what? We're able to deliver it 90 days later.
And I just wanted to add to that, just to be clear, over a third of our customer base is international, right? And when I say that, it's not U.S. domestic shippers who export or import things from other countries. It is over a third of my install base are companies that purchase the solution or subscribe to it in the countries where they live and manage their own domestic and international transportation from those countries.
Okay, thanks for that. This questioner is saying, let me see here. Our company uses multiple suppliers, freight forwarders, carriers. How does your solution handle that?
I'll go around. So, just as we mentioned, API first. So we're able to make connections to that ecosystem a lot easier. So whether you're using a particular vendor, carrier, freight forwarder, the like, is we have the ability to make those connections quite easy. But the additional benefit is we're only setting them up once. So, if you're a shipper here today and you want to use, vendor XYZ or carrier XYZ, that same carrier is going to be available to other shippers within the ecosystem. So if I'm a vendor, the benefit to me, of course, is I have one place to access my pool of customers. I don't have to have separate logins. I don't have to have separate SCAC codes. I don't have to have, user management, which is a nightmare. But also the shippers that come into the ecosystem, they get to benefit from the trail that was blazed from the shipper before them and setting up those carriers and those vendors. And guess what? I get access to those. And it's a flip of a switch to say, hey, you've already been set up. I want to start exchanging information with you, whether that be a tender, or whether that be some type of documentation is, it's a one-time setup. And the benefit, of course, is, it's beneficial for the shipper because they don't have to set them up every single time. And of course, is a benefit to the customer, carrier, vendor, whoever that third party may be, because they don't need to get set up every single time for every single customer. So.
Great. Well, hate to say this, it's been a fantastic discussion up to this point, but unfortunately, we're just about out of time. We have time for just one final question. And here it is. I think I'm going to I don't know, maybe I'll hit Brian up with this one. Let's see. What is my first step to tearing down functional silos and enabling a unified package of execution solutions?
Yeah, great question. First step is understanding your current environment. Taking an inventory of what applications are you using, What vendors are you partnering with? What's your deployment strategy? Am I on premise? Am I cloud? Am I SaaS? Is you really need to understand where you are today to help plot the course of where you want to be. So having a good understanding of the current state, but also understanding where you want to go to be more scalable, to be more resilient, to break down the silos. So now that we have the two endpoints, where am I today and where do I want to be, I can start plotting a course to say, these are the types of things that I need to do to get to where I want to go. So I would say the next step is understanding your current landscape, understanding your current environment, and getting a good foundation started.
It could certainly be an intimidating prospect to take all these systems that we've been relying on for so long, as ineffective and inefficient as they are. They're comfortable. And it's the idea of bringing it all together is so attractive. And yet where you get to start is a big question. Thank you for that, Brian. Audience members, any questions that you asked that we didn't have time for today, I'm sure our speakers would only be too happy to answer them offline. But for now, I really want to thank both our speakers, Bryant Smith and Rob Schaefer, for an excellent presentation. We learned a lot about the idea of a unified solution from Manhattan Associates. Also, here's something, here's an asset for all of you attendees. It will be sent to you in a follow-up email. It is a supply chain, a case study involving guest supply, welcoming a new era of transportation innovation. So look for that. Also, here is how you can contact our speakers. Their emails are right there, and that information also will be provided to you in a follow-up email. So thanks again, Rob and Brian, very much for a great presentation. Thank you, audience, for sitting in and for your excellent questions. And everybody, have a great day.
Thank you.